just about every little town around in the south, and a lot of places in the north too, I know, have little city lakes around. We've got a lot of them here in Oklahoma. Just about every little lake has got a city lake, and some of them are only a few hundred acres. Some of them might be 1,000 acres or a couple thousand acres, but some of them have restrictions where you can only use small motors on them. Are those things any good? Are they worth spending your time fishing? Good morning, guys and girls. May 7. That's right, May 7. We've already used up a week. 1 Peter 4:12. 1 Peter 4:12 says, "My friends, do not be surprised at the terrible trouble which now comes to test you." To test you. So it says right here that trouble comes to test you. Golly, I don't know if all trouble comes to test you or not, but I believe that some of it probably does. That would sort of be saying that trouble comes from God, and I really don't believe that trouble comes from God. I know that we have to pay a price for our sins, but we have a lot of trouble that are not paying the price for our sins. It's just trouble that happens. I do know that the ruler of this world that we live in, he who rules the world is not God. He who rules the world that we live in is Satan. It's the fallen angel. And Satan causes trouble in people's lives. He goes about seeking to destroy and kill, to cause trouble in people's lives. Y'all know what we've been going through here lately, and it's certainly been a big test. I mean, it's been a major test. Do I think that God caused that stroke in Chris? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. How in the world do you make it through situations like that? How do you get through financial ruin? How do you get through overwhelming illnesses? How do you get through death? How do you do that? How do you do that? Well, that's what today's devotional is really all about. Do not be surprised at the terrible trouble which now comes to test you. Chris and I found a little patch of fish one week on a small flat on the bed of a creek. So we were on a creek bed, fishing a creek bed that ran through a little small flat. The spot was only about 50 yards long, but was loaded with really good bass. For 3 straight days, we caught 6 to 10 bass every time we fished this little special honey hole. Then it rained 4 or 5 inches. Trouble came, and it rained 4 or 5 inches. The lake came up 6 feet, and we couldn't buy a bite on that spot. Could not buy a bite. Some of you guys that tournament fish, some of you girls that tournament fish, you've seen situations like this. It's perfect, and then it goes to 0. The Bible tells us that we will have terrible times that will come along. Happens to everybody. Doesn't matter. Rich, poor, king, servant, doesn't matter. Terrible times come to everybody. Most all of us have already been there, and we know they will come again. That's just life. That's how life is. There's just lots and lots and lots of bad things that goes on. So how do we make it through these tests? We make it by God's amazing grace. That's right. Whatever happens to you, whatever happens to me, God's grace is sufficient. God's grace will get it through us. And you know what? Can I tell you? He has mountains and mountains and mountains of grace. He's just waiting to give to His chosen ones. You and I are chosen by God. You just kind of look behind me, you see a few mountains back there in the background. I live here in the Arbuckles. Those mountains, just think about them being full of God's grace. And He's got that grace just waiting to give you when you get in one of those tough times, when you get in one of those situations where it just takes your breath away. It just eats at your very heart and soul. It just takes you to your knees. God's got grace to give you to get through it. Been there right now. When terrible trouble happens, God will always be right there on the spot with enough amazing grace to see us through. Enough amazing grace to get us by anything. Does it hurt? Is there still pain? Absolutely. Is it still a big hill to climb to get out of that valley? Absolutely. Do you know what the stair steps are? God's amazing grace. Here's our tip for today. It's a good one. Search out small city lakes for some surprisingly good fishing. Is it worth going and fishing those small city lakes? Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Here in Oklahoma, they've stocked a lot of those city lakes, those little city lakes, with Florida bass. Some of the largest bass in the state of Oklahoma are in those little city lakes. In fact, I think it's Cedar Creek here in Oklahoma. It's got a 4 horsepower limit. I think you can put a bigger boat on there. You just can't start your engine. But that's where the state record came from, over 15 pounds. So a lot of these city lakes that almost nobody fishes on have some of the best bass fishing, some of the best crappie fishing, some of the best cat fishing that you could ever imagine. And a lot of you have got little city lakes around where you live. You never ever fish. You never fish. I know, because again, like that trouble we was talking about, been there, done that. Guys and girls, go out there and have you a great one today. And remember, I sure do love you.